You've set an appointment. Now it's time to pre-qualify that appointment. And just like any other appointment that you set, you want to pre-qualify on the spot. You don't want to have to follow up with them later on to ask them those questions because it's just going to elongate the sales cycle. So what you want to say is something along the lines of, okay, great. I have us penciled in for Friday at 6. Before we connect, I just have a couple super quick questions to ask you just to make sure that we're fully prepared and I can provide you with the most accurate information and be the best assistance to you and your family. And I'll be brief because I know your time is valuable. So in other words, I'm not asking if this is a good time. We are going to do this. It is going to be quick and it's in your best interest. And the first question I want to really ask them about is the property. Now, it's not uncommon in these conversations when you're setting the appointment. They may tell you something about the property. They may say it's in really tough condition or that it's in good condition, as they're speaking to you with regards to what's going on in the situation. So in either one of those directions, let's say they told me, hey, it's really not in good shape. So I'm imagining it doesn't have any modifications or changes in like kitchen, bathrooms, or flooring. Is that right? And they're like, no. And to the best of your knowledge, is there any issues with like major heating, cooling systems, plumbing, or the roof? And again, just kind of gathering information to see the level of disrepair that the property's in. Now, let's say, they've shared with us, yeah, it's like in pretty good shape. It's like, okay, great. Well, to the best of your knowledge, over time, have you guys done any changes or modifications in like kitchen, bathrooms, or flooring that you believe would affect its value in some way? And then be quiet, okay? And in both of those instances, it's like, okay, great. Let's say we did decide to proceed with selling the real property because they're either going to tell you that they want to sell it or they're going to tell you we're not sure, right? And that's why we're setting an appointment to give them a clear picture of value and what the proceeds would be in some of these ancillary services. So if you did decide to proceed with selling the property, are you interested in putting any capital into the property to increase features and amenities? Or would you want me to help you someone like me to help you to sell it as it is, where it is? Is that right? And then be quiet. And then the same if they tell you that it's in disrepair. Okay, so being that it's in disrepair, is the family in a position or do you guys have the desire to put capital into the property to increase its features and amenities so we can maximize value? Or would you want someone like me just to help you to sell it as it is, where it is, right? Now, let's say they say to you, yeah, like we're open to putting some capital into the property to increase value, provided that it makes sense. You can say something like, great, my professional experience is I treat your money as though it's my money. And, we don't want you to spend $1 unless you would get 2 or 3 back. And usually with these types of properties, it usually is the case where it makes sense just to sell it as it is, where it is. So it's not like if we put 25 in, we can get like 50 out. It's usually like if we put 25 in, we can get like, 28 or 30 out. And sometimes, the juice isn't worth the squeeze sort of thing. So we'll look at both of those options together as a team. And ultimately, you're the boss. You'll decide, what you feel most comfortable with. Fair enough? And they say, great. Now, if we were to decide to go down the path of putting capital into the property, would it be helpful or useful to connect you with vendors that are licensed, bonded, and insured in terms of like paint or flooring or things of that nature? And they say, yes. It's like, okay, great. And we actually have a project manager on our team who can oversee that process for you at no additional charge. It's just our way to take that off of your shoulders, put it onto ours, and make it as smooth and easy as possible for you. Does that make sense to you? And they're like, yeah, it makes total sense. And then if you don't mind me asking, is the property currently occupied or is it vacant? Now, if it's vacant, easy peasy, right? If it's occupied, I'm going to ask some more questions. Okay. And being that it's occupied, is the individual living there? Do they have a lease or what's the situation? The reason that I'm asking that is that I need to find out if it's a family member that's living there. If there is a lease, are they paying? And if there isn't a lease, then I know that we have a couple kind of ways to go about getting them out, whether, writs of possession, whether that be like an eviction. That's if there is a lease and they're not paying. If there's not a lease, then it could be like an ejectment or unlawful detainer. Again, I need to be clear about what the situation is so I can advise and guide accordingly. So let's say, there's a tenant there and they haven't paid in like 6 months. Okay, great. So then being that they haven't paid, there is a mechanism to go move forward with getting them out of the property. And would it be helpful or useful if I connected you with an attorney who could assist with that? And then be quiet, right? If it is a family member, which isn't uncommon, probably in like 30% of situations, it's a family member. What I would say is something along the lines of like, it's not uncommon that there be a family member that's living there. It happens about 30% of the time. What's also equally not as common is that the family member actually has the means and the ability to like continue to live in the property, right? So I guess my question to you would be is, does the individual that's living there, do they have the financial ability to be able to just keep it, provided that the family was open to letting them stay and then be quiet, right? And again, if they don't have the ability, it's like, okay, great. And then is the rest of the siblings, are you guys of the mindset that you're okay with the individual staying there in perpetuity forever, and you guys will figure out how to pay for it? Is that a serious consideration or option? And then be quiet. And again, the more you're willing to share with these clients, the more that you're demonstrating to them that you know what you're doing. The next question that I want to ask is, if you had it your own way, right, do you have a preference whether to keep it or to sell it? And they might be like, yeah, I'm probably my preference would be to sell. When that's usually the case, right? Sometimes they're like, I'm not sure. And then I might dig. It's like, okay, well, let's say you decided not to sell the property, which is perfectly fine. My job is to help you. It's never to talk you into doing anything. What do you think you'd do with it? Would it just become a secondary home or like a short-term rental, or what would the dynamic be? Now, if they say it's going to be a secondary home, I say, okay, great. Florida has a lot of secondary homes. Can I share with you my professional experience with regards to secondary homes? Yeah, with the maintenance, the taxes, and the insurance, in order for it to make financial sense, you would have to use it at least 3 months out of the year, right? And in order for it to make financial sense to do so. Otherwise, if it's going to be less, you could just stay in a really nice Airbnb on the ocean and spend a fraction of the money that you'll spend with maintenance, taxes, and insurance. So I guess my question is for you guys at this stage in life, does that seem like a realistic expectation that you'd be able to utilize it that much and then be quiet? Again, just digging and sifting, helping people to kind of dig through, things that they're probably thinking about. Now, let's say when I ask that question, I'm like, okay, well, is everybody on the same page in terms of selling? I've only spoken to you. I can see here there's some other beneficiaries, your siblings, Susie and Bob and Jim. Is everybody on the same page in terms of selling the real property? Or is there any disagreement of some sort? And then be quiet. Now, let's say they say, well, yeah, one of my siblings is, they want to keep it. I say, okay, well, that's not uncommon that there be one, whenever there's more than one person in a room or two people in a room, it's a crowd. And, having the desire to keep it is much different than having the actual means and the ability to. So my intention to ask my next question, again, not to be nosy, just to see if I could give any more information that could be helpful or useful in some way. Do you believe that they have the financial means and the ability to actually buy you out? And they're like, well, they're either going to say yes or no. More often than not, they say no. That's usually the case. You have to remember 65% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. So that means 7 out of 10 times, for the most part, they're going to say no. And if they say, well, yeah, they could, it's like, okay, well, if you don't mind me asking, is there any reason they haven't done it yet? And again, I just want to sift through. Let's say they say, nope, we're all on the same page. Okay, great. So you guys are all on the same page in terms of selling. There's no disagreement there. And ideally, in terms of what you guys want as a family, because that's what's most important, how soon would you like to have it on the market for sale? And then be quiet. Now, when you say this, you're going to hear things like, well, we are not sure as to when we'd like to put on a market, or they're going to say we want to wait until probate's complete, or they might say like right away if it's possible, right? So regardless of what they say, this is a wonderful opportunity to create urgency by educating them. And again, I'm not an attorney, so you have to look at, your particular state. I'm an expert in Florida. Let's say they're like, well, we're just going to wait until probate's complete. I'm like, okay, great. And that certainly is an option to you. What I'm about to share with you is not to create urgency. It's just to let you know that it's a possibility for you. Because I know every month that goes by, month after month, it is costing money with maintenance, taxes, insurance, debt service, and that can add up pretty quickly. So in the state of Florida, the proceeds from the sale of a homesteaded property are actually shielded from creditors. So if your family member had creditors like medical bills, credit card bills, they can't touch any of the money from the sale. Did you know that? And they're like, no, I didn't know that. Yeah. And truthfully, when a property is homesteaded and it's passing to linear heirs, linear is a fancy word for direct descendants like siblings or children, it technically passes outside of probate. So yours and your siblings' interest in the property had vested at the time of passing. Did you know that? And they're like, no. So it's like, yeah, in my professional experience, provided that 3 criteria are met, number 1, it's homesteaded. Number 2, it's passing to linear heirs. And number 3, there's no fighting or disagreement amongst beneficiaries, which I'm not hearing that. You can proceed to put on a market whenever you like. Usually takes about, 30 days to get an offer that's acceptable in this market. Once we get that offer, we just put language in the additional terms and conditions. It states that the sale is subject to blank county probate court approval. We negotiate an extended closing period, maybe 45 or 60 days, which would give us like 90 to 100 days from start to finish. And that will give ample time to the probate attorney, in this instance, blank, John Smith. Again, I have all this information from, what I'm pulling from the courthouse. Give, John Smith ample time to get what's called an order to determine homestead, and the property can be sold and the funds can be dispersed right away. Now, I'm aware that that's a lot of information at one time. Does that make sense to you? And then be quiet. And they'll say, well, yeah, I guess that makes sense. Or yeah, my attorney told me something of that nature, right? So yeah, again, putting a home on the market and selling it are two different things. And once families recognize that this is a mechanism they can utilize, they usually decide to do it because it saves them time, which ultimately equates to money. So in other words, you can wait, let's say 90 to 120 days to get started, and then another 30 days to get an offer, another 45, 60 days to close, which could be 6, 7, 8 months of carrying cost. Or you could be done and complete in 90 to 120 days and save yourself, 3, 4 months of carrying cost because you already have a contract in place. Does that approach make sense to you? They're like, well, yeah. And is that something you think that you would want to take advantage of? And then be quiet. Okay. And they'll be like, well, yeah, I'd be open to that. The next thing I'm going to ask them about is how to get them the information, right? So I'm going to be sending you over some information in preparation for connecting via email. What's the best email for you? Now here, you can use this as an opportunity to potentially meet with all the beneficiaries, because it's best if you can. Otherwise, they're going to play the game of telephone, right? Where you meet with the personal representative, they're going to share the information, So when I ask for the email, I'll say something like, yeah, well, I appreciate you giving me the email. And now I think about it, because I've had the good fortune of helping so many families in these dynamics. It's really, really helpful if we can all be on a call at the same time, just to review the information in terms of transparency, make sure everybody's on the same page and the same information. What's also true is I can act kind of as a liaison, for the family, and ask, very straightforward questions to help people to get to a place where, they're making decisions, sort of thing. And I can serve as a catalyst for action. So I'm wondering, do you think it would be helpful or useful to get your siblings on the call with us so we can review this together as a team? And then be quiet, like, yeah, I think that'd be good. Okay, great. So I'm imagining if we were to connect, all of us, and review the information via Zoom or telephone, probably like early evenings would work for you guys, maybe like 6 or 7 Eastern time. Is that right? And they're like, yeah. It's like, okay. So what I can do is I can move our appointment from the 3 we had on Friday to 6. I'll send you the information via email. And if you'd be kind enough to forward it to John and Susie in preparation for connecting, that way we'll all have the information in front of us and we can go over it together as a team. Now let's say they're like, well, I just want to gather information. I'm not going to list the properties. Like, absolutely. Again, as I mentioned to you, my intention is just to be a resource with regards to information. At this moment, there's no obligation whatsoever. Obviously, if you did decide at some point to proceed and hire an agent, put on the market, we'd love to have the opportunity to earn your business. At this moment, though, it's just for informational purposes and, again, to equip you with everything you need so you guys can decide accordingly. That sounds reasonable, doesn't it? And they're like, well, yeah, that sounds reasonable. The next question that I want to ask them is with regards to hiring me as an agent. So, other than what we've discussed, again, if you guys do move in the direction of putting it on the open market and selling it, some agent's got a great track record, somebody who can help you with ancillary services, somebody who understands the probate process inside and out and knows how to cross the T's and dot the I's and can give you guidance that could save you time and money. Is there anything else you'd be looking for from me as your agent that would be important to you? And then be quiet. And they'll say, well, I want to talk to you about the commission. What's your commission? Or whatever they're going to say. And if they say, what's your commission? You can use the standard handler. It's a wonderful question. And, I'll make a note of that. That'll be one of the first things we talk about. Commission's always negotiable. I promise you this, that won't be a reason why we don't do business. I want us both to feel good about what we're doing. Otherwise, we won't do it. We'll go over the options that you have at your disposal. And whatever you decide, I'll support you 100%. Fair enough? And they're like, yeah, I guess that's fair. And then you proceed, right? And that'll typically work like 80, 90% of the time. You might get that one person's like, well, can't you just tell me what it is? And then you can give them a range. I would usually be like, yeah, it's a range somewhere between 5-6% of the agreed upon purchase sales price, depending on the situation and the dynamics. And they're like, okay. And then you proceed, right? But 80% of the time, it'll be fine with that handler. The next question that I want to kind of guide them towards, and it's really a statement. It's not really a question. So after I ask them, is there anything else you'd be looking for from me as your agent that would be important to you? You're like this, and this. Okay, great. And I'm like, all right, excellent. I've made a note of those things. And I know that I'm just a voice over the phone, right? So in the email that I'm going to send you, amongst other things, in the signature of my email, there'll be a link to our website, which you can check out and put a face to the name. There'll also be a link to all of my personal reviews online from families just like yours that we've helped from start to finish in the area get the most and overcome the challenges that are associated with the process. So I encourage you to take a look at a few of those in preparation for connecting, so that way you can get a feel and a flavor for the service and results we provide. Does that sound okay? And they're like, yeah, it sounds great. The next question is, okay, I know that I have asked you a bunch of questions. So do you have any questions or concerns for me? And then be quiet. And then they may ask you some questions, whatever they have, you can kind of take notes on and let them know that you'll, cover that over your time together. And then the final question is, again, the straightforward one of saying like, okay, great. And, based on what you've been kind of share with me, you strike me to be someone who's super straightforward and to the point, like I'm the same way. So when we do connect, again, provided it makes sense, numbers work, you guys feel comfortable and confident with me that I can help. You do that due diligence, you check me out, you see track record and reviews. Do you think you guys would be open to hiring me to help you when I speak to you tomorrow, or when I speak to you Friday at 6? And then be quiet. Now, let's say they say, we're not sure if we're going to sell yet. So, you strike me to be someone who's straightforward and to the point. I'm the same way. So when we connect on Friday at 6, provided that it makes sense, provided numbers work and you feel comfortable and confident with me that I can help, and of course, provided that you do decide to proceed with selling it, it sounds like you'd be open to the possibility of hiring me to help when I see you Friday at 6. Is that right? Like, yeah, we'd be open. Okay, great. Well, again, having heard the situation and what you're looking to accomplish and why, I feel supremely confident for providing me the opportunity to share some information with you that could be helpful or useful. The other thing that's really true for me is I just want to offer you my sincere condolences for your family's loss. And, they're like, thank you. And you're like, yeah, I mean it. And, again, as promised, we're going to send you this information via email. My assistant will call you to confirm. And I look forward to connecting with you on Friday. And provided that it all makes sense and you feel comfortable and confident, we can take the next steps. Okay. And they say, okay, great. So that's how it's done. You want to do it every single time without exception. And that's the way pros do it. See you in the next video.
I just wanted to ask you which way I ought to go.
Well, that depends on where you want to get to.
Oh, it really doesn't matter. As long as I can...
Then it really doesn't matter which way you go.
What I find very interesting to me, the Cheshire Cat represents life. And you're presented with a myriad of choices and options.